Hello and welcome to another episode of the DVD Graveyard. Tonight we're going to be taking a look at Return of the Living Dead Part 2 from 1988. This time around, this film would be directed by Ken Widerhorn. Now, this is a movie that kind of has a little bit of a troubled past, definitely has a very troubled production that I'm not going to get too much into. I'll talk a little bit about it, but I remember, way back in the day, whenever I was kind of first getting into collecting movies and kind of watching all these movies for the first time, I remember, watching a lot of those kind of OGs on YouTube, kind of talking about different movies, and I remember this one coming up and having a very, very mixed reception. Like, some people really, really liked it, and some people really just hated it. And honestly, it's kind of suffered that dislike for a lot of years. Like, I definitely still talk to a lot more people who dislike this movie, especially compared to the first movie, which I understand. Like, I could see how this movie would disappoint a lot of folks, again, compared to the first one. But regardless, I still love this movie, and I'm excited to talk about it. I'm not going to delve too deeply on it, but I really kind of got an appreciation for it whenever I picked up this Scream Factory Blu-ray, this collector's edition of Return of the Living Dead Part 2. So, like a lot of folks, the first time I saw this movie was actually on this DVD release, which is I think it's like a 2004 release that was released by Warner Brothers. It's from I think, again, like I said, from 2004, and I remember seeing this DVD at the video store all the time. Like, I remember every time I would go in there, I would see this on the shelf, and I actually didn't pick up a copy of it for myself until years later, but this is how I saw this movie for the first time, was on this DVD release. And I remember, not hating it, but just not being totally in love with it either. It was just kind of like it was what it was. Like, I enjoyed it, and I liked kind of the atmosphere, and I liked the vibe of what was going on. Definitely not as great as the first movie. It did not even hold a candle to that first movie, which it still doesn't. But I remember liking it. And again, like I said, it wasn't until many years later when I actually picked up this Return of the Living Dead Part 2 from Scream Factory, this copy of it right here, that I kind of found a whole new appreciation for it. And kind of the main reason that, what that kind of boils down to is, again, like I said, this movie had a very troubled production. And one of the big things that happened is the original score for this movie was more or less kind of shit canned. Like, it was tossed to the side. I can't remember if it was the director or one of the producers that kind of made that decision. But the score was basically replaced on all of the DVD copies, and then anywhere that you really watch it streaming, I think it has this different score. And the score is not awful. It's just much more of a very bland, very, sanitized kind of feeling horror movie score. Like, it's not great. It's very boring. And just does not do well for the movie. And I'd always heard about kind of this lost score that was on a lot of the VHS releases that was kind of lost whenever it was ported over to DVD, and it wasn't until I got this Scream Factory, this Blu-ray, that they actually restored that original score. And oh my God, I am a person who I love, movies are not the same, depending on the music that is kind of involved. Music kind of plays a big part in how a film is perceived by me especially, but it wasn't until I saw this one with that original score I really saw the potential that this movie had and how great this movie actually was, because the score on this, the original score, changes the entire tone of the movie. Like, I mean, it feels like a completely different movie whenever you watch it with the original score. It goes from being a very goofy, silly, zombie horror film to being a classic 80s horror comedy. The music completely changes the vibe to this. So if you get the chance, absolutely pick up this Scream Factory Collector's Edition just to have that original score, and it has the redone score in it too if you prefer that one. But I implore you to definitely watch the movie. If you don't like it, and you've only seen this kind of DVD version of it, definitely I highly recommend trying to check this out with the original score, because again, it changes the whole tone of the movie completely. So, having said that, I know that that's not really the only reason a lot of people don't care for this movie. Like I said, this movie had a very troubled production, and again, it's very different from the first movie. This one goes in a very, very heavy comedy direction. It almost plays out like a remake of the first movie, with a lot of the characters from the first film kind of returning in more or less the same role. I mean, in this film, most famously, like I know that. For example, Don Calfa was supposed to return in this movie, and essentially again play a very similar role to what he would play to the character of Ernie in the first movie, and he actually had to audition for the role, and he actually did not get the part. I guess he didn't audition well enough, which I find just to be absolutely ridiculous. So that kind of just again just is an example of kind of how bad this movie, the production was on this film. I'm not going to go too much into it, but again, that's just kind of a little taste of sort of what was going on. And like I said, this movie again goes very heavy in the comedy. It's more of a remake, and honestly, this movie has a very like heavy, almost family oriented feel, which I don't dislike. I don't hate it. It feels a lot safer than the first movie. Is one thing that I can. That's kind of the best way to describe it. Like this really feels like one that I think that the director said he wanted to make like the Police Academy of horror films, because they were kind of looking at turning this into like a franchise, much like Friday the 13th or something like that, just doing a huge kind of franchise that would just go on and on and on, and kind of reusing the same actors. But again, this one, I do enjoy it, but I understand a lot of people's kind of issues with this movie, which we'll kind of get more into that. I'm not going to dive too deeply in on this one. I'm going to read the back of this plot synopsis off the back of this Scream Factory Blu-ray, and then I'll kind of do my cast listing, and then we'll kind of get into the review. The zombies have returned. The horror begins again as mysterious barrels bounce off of an army transport as it passes through a new housing development and land near an abandoned cemetery. Mischievous neighborhood boys discover the barrels and open them, unaware of the evil contained within. A deadly green vapor escapes and turns the living into flesh-eating zombies and causes the dead to rise from their graves. As these hideous living dead hunt down the fresh human brains they need, man is pitted against man, and the living against the dead. It is a macabre struggle for survival. So that's a pretty good little plot synopsis there. So, like I said, I'll kind of mention the cast a little bit. Like I said, a lot of the cast from the first film returns. Not a lot of them, but several characters. So most notably would be Tom Matthews returns in this movie to play the character of Joey, who again is more or less the same character, Freddy, that he played in the first movie, alongside James Karen, who played Ed in this film, as opposed to Frank. Again, very similar, kind of same relationship in this movie, just different profession, I guess, if you will. Jonathan Terry returns in this movie as Colonel Glover, who played this, again, the exact same character in the first film. One very notable character in this movie is going to be Michael Kenworthy, who plays Jesse Wilson. He's a very good child actor in this movie, and he's really funny. He really cracks me up in this film. He's kind of integral to the plot in this movie, and he's kind of one of our main characters. And another character in this movie that I really like is Philip Bruns, who plays Doc Mandel, and he is basically who I would assume would have been played by Don Calfa. I think that would have been his character in this movie if he had been actually gotten the role, which he should have. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. So basically, when this movie starts out, we start out with this army transport that is transporting these several barrels of the 2,4,5 trioxin, and the guy is kind of sitting there smoking weed, and he loses a barrel off the side of the truck, and it kind of rolls into this river and goes into this sort of like this kind of like drainage pipe, and that is where it ends up. And then we come up to this kind of housing development area. It's kind of this suburb that's being built, and that's when we meet Jesse, and he's kind of hanging out with his friends. They're these kids that kind of pick on him all the time, and they're trying to kind of get him to do shit that he doesn't want to do. And they're all kind of screwing around on this construction site, and they end up going into this kind of drainage ditch, and they find this barrel where they see this corpse inside of it. And Jesse is kind of more or less sort of not really obsessing over it, but he kind of goes back to check it out. I think it's Jesse anyway. It might be the other kid that he's with. I can't remember. But they go back, and they ultimately end up releasing the trioxin, which kind of floats over to this into this graveyard that's nearby. and then of course the it starts to storm, and we kind of have the same events that occur in the first film. Like I said, this movie plays out much like a remake. And having said that, that is also when we meet during the same time. We meet James Karen and Tom Matthews characters, who in this film, again, they have the same relationship. You know, James Karen is the guy who's kind of instructing Tom Matthews' character in this movie, but this time instead of working at a medical supply warehouse, they are grave robbers. They're basically going and stealing all this this jewelry and things off of these corpses in this graveyard. And that's one thing I can say about this, is that the sets in this movie look fantastic. Like, I love the graveyard set, and I love the setting of just this kind of suburban atmosphere that this movie has. Like, this movie really, like, I don't know if it's just me, but movies from 87 to 89, they all feel very similar. They've just got this really nice vibe to them that I can't really explain, but like I can always tell when I'm watching a movie from like the very, the late 80s. Like, they always have that very similar vibe that just feels very cozy to me. This movie again has a very kind of cozy atmosphere to it, very homey kind of atmosphere to it. Again, that might just be me, but that's the way I kind of feel about it. But basically, the events kind of play out the same. The zombies start to rise. They start to come out of the ground and basically start to wreak havoc on this neighborhood. And of course, we meet a few more characters in this film. Again, I'm just kind of blowing through this. I'm not not going to deep dive on this like I did on the first film. But basically, the zombies start to kind of terrorize this community. The cable guy who's kind of there, kind of hitting on Jesse's sister. They all kind of end up together, and they go over to this the Doc Mandel's character. They go over to his house and they kind of steal his car. Not steal it. They take his car with him. Involved in this, and they kind of start to ride around town and trying to kind of get away from all this and try to figure out kind of what's going on. And the military is kind of blocked off the town, and they more or less are just kind of bouncing around from location to location trying to get away from these zombies. So speaking of the zombies, I want to talk about them just a little bit, and just kind of the centralized kind of plot going on. So the zombies again are kind of the same thing. They're this unstoppable force that's been brought back by this triox, and they cannot be killed because they are already dead. So essentially, the only thing about it though is, again, they don't feel as dangerous as they did in the first film. Like, they don't feel as overwhelming, or as and this movie just is not as stressful. Again, it feels much safer, and it has a very, again, a very comedic feel to it, all in all. Like, it's just a very goofy kind of feeling movie. Now, the zombies look really good. They don't look as good, again, as the zombies in the first film. Even like the Tar Man. Like, the Tar Man comes back in this movie in like a very small cameo appearance. Does not look nearly as good, but it is nice to kind of see the Tar Man again. But they don't feel the same, if that makes any sense. They feel very, very kind of sanitized, again, very, very safe, very cushy kind of in a way. You're going to be laughing at them more often than not. But having said that, the effects in this movie are done really, really well. Like, all of the zombies, I think, look really good. I have no qualms about that. I think they all look fantastic. Now, having said that, also, there's not really a lot of gore in this movie. Like I said earlier, this movie has almost a very family friendly kind of ordeal. Like, honestly, if you have not, I don't really want to say kids, but like teens, like preteens or whatever, and they're kind of getting into horror, I think that this would be a really good kind of horror movie to start them with, because again, it's not super scary, it's not very overly violent, but it is still a fun time, like, and it is still a good movie, and I really like the kind of premise that's going on in this, and the little bit of gore that we do get. It's not super over the top, and it's not really, really bloody, but it's done really well. Like, everything looks really nice. It's got that really nice late 80s kind of feel to it again. everything is just is going really well, and all the actors and stuff seem like they're having a good time, like everyone who's playing a zombie or in the kind of the main cast. They're all seem like they're having a good time, but again, if you kind of read into the production, you'll find that was not really the case. Everybody was kind of struggling with this one. I think even Tom Matthews contacted Don Calfa and told him he was lucky that he was not involved in this movie. He kind of dodged a bullet with that one. So that's kind of a shame to hear, but again, it does not translate on screen. Like it's a very fun time, like watching this movie. Again, there's a lot going on, and it's got a really nice kind of late '80s atmosphere to it. Yeah, again, it's not as great as the first movie, but the events are kind of playing out very similarly. So as we go on, Tom Matthews and James Karen, their characters more or less kind of suffer the same fate, which is kind of a bummer. Because like you bring those two guys back from the first movie, which are definitely the most recognizable characters from the first movie, and you again kind of just give them the same fate, but a lot less impactful. Like I mean, more or less, like once they really kind of their zombification, I guess you would call it, kind of starts to take hold, they kind of just drop off out of the movie. Like, you don't even really see them anymore. And it's handled, again, very much more comedically. Like, in the first movie, their deaths or their transformations, I guess you could say, like, you really feel it. And, like, you feel really bad for them. And, like, you feel their pain in the film. But in this one, again, it's everything is played for comedy. Like, everything is very slapsticky, very goofy, which, again, I don't say that in a bad way. It's just kind of a bummer, because you're like, damn, I was really hoping that they would have more to do in this movie, in some way, shape, or form, but they do not. And it's really funny that they come back as characters, because we get a lot of really funny callbacks. Like I said, Colonel Glover is in this movie, so there's a really funny part where they get a hold of him. Jesse gets a hold of the Colonel, and basically he tries to kind of tell him what's going on, but he gets cut off. So it's kind of a good thing, because then the whole town would have been nuked. Or like, for example, Tom Matthews, at one point they're riding in the car and he's like, I feel like this has all happened before. Me, you, them out there. It feels like a dream, and that was really funny. Like, there's a lot of, like I said, really kind of goofy sort of callbacks to the first movie in that instance. So while all this is going on, they basically find out that the zombies' kind of weakness is electricity, like that shocking them, electrocuting them in some way, shape, or form will destroy them. So they kind of lure them all to this power plant. Kind of our remaining characters, the electrician. I feel bad because I didn't get his name, but he's just this young guy who was kind of hitting on Jesse's sister earlier on in the movie, and he's kind of like a cable guy. But Jesse's sister, and Jesse himself, they all kind of go back to this power plant along with Doc Mandel, and they kind of devise this plan to kind of lead them into this power plant between these transformers, and they're going to kind of electrocute them all in one go. And that's pretty much more or less exactly what happens. They electrocute all of these zombies all at once. The military kind of comes in, kind of burns the corpses. Again, we get a lot of really comedic moments, like the zombie that looks like Michael Jackson from the Thriller video kind of walks across. So again, that little bit right there kind of gives you all that you need to know about this movie. And basically after that, we kind of roll credits. I mean, we get one little last one-liner from this severed head of a zombie that we kind of saw earlier in the movie. But after that, again, the credits roll, and that is Return of the Living Dead Part 2. Now, I apologize I didn't go more in depth on this one. I just didn't really have a lot to say about this one, because I do love this movie. I don't love it nearly as much as the first movie, but I do appreciate it for what it is, and I do enjoy watching it. It is another one that I kind of go back to on like a stormy night, much like I said with the first one. Maybe this one would end up on like a part 2 video to that, so I don't know, but this one does have a really nice cozy vibe to it. Again, it's very, very comedic. It is very funny, in a lot of parts. Like it did have me laughing, and it's very slapsticky. And like I said, especially if you can find a version of this movie with the original score. Like that kind of amplifies this movie completely. It makes it feel like a completely different film and really plays into that horror comedy vibe, because it goes from, again, like I said, on this DVD version of it, it goes from being a just not so good attempt at horror comedy to being a very great 80s horror comedy with zombie. Yeah, I mean, basically, whenever you watch it on this Blu-ray. So I highly recommend, if you get the chance, hunt down this Scream Factory's collector's edition Blu-ray of this film. I don't think it's very expensive. I got it here a while back, and it wasn't super expensive by any means. But I absolutely love that version. I could never go back to the other version once I've seen this, but I don't think it is streaming anywhere. I think the only place you can find it is with that redone score, which is a shame, because it's like, why the hell would you, it was a rights issue or something like that. But again, I know that music kind of doesn't really change a lot of stuff for a lot of people, but to me, for this movie, it completely changes the tone, and I really like this movie. Again, it is a great movie. Definitely not one of my favorite films of all time, much like the first one is. It's not nearly on that level, but it is a fun time. It is a good little watch that I do enjoy throwing on every once in a while. It definitely helps to have some kind of alcoholic influence in there if you are watching this movie. Get you a couple cold ones going, or get you a glass of bourbon or something like that to kind of go along with this. That makes this movie all the better, and it's just a good movie to kind of kick back and laugh to. And it is a good follow-up to the first movie in a way. Like I said, it does play out more or less like a remake. But it does still feel like it kind of shares the same DNA of the first movie, which I really like. So it does make a good little companion piece to the first one. Now, they didn't have to make this one, but I'm glad that they did. I'm glad it exists, and I'm glad I own it, and I'm glad I'm able to watch this whenever I get the chance, because it is a fun time. So anyway, I'll stop rambling. I hope everyone enjoyed this review. I wanted to get both of these movies out kind of back to back, and just kind of get them out of the way. If you haven't seen this movie, definitely check it out. Give it a chance. Go into it with an open mind. As always, I hope everyone has a great night. Stay tuned for the next episode, and goodbye.